All right, Lions fans, this is your guy back with another video talking about the structure or the foundation of the Lions team. When I first got started making the videos, I started off with the four anchors. And what I mean, it would be this is what you would build. What I mean, well, let me say it this way. What I mean by anchors is what you would build, what you start the building off of. These are the four pillars that you can count on game in, game out, week in, week out, practice, film study, so forth. And even if they're not quote unquote like the leader or designated the leader, yet still they show such leadership qualities that they undoubtedly become the leader of the team or leaders of the team. I give you Trey Flowers, Frank Ragnow, Kenny Galladay, and I'm going to go and say Duron Harmon. It's a toss-up between him and Tracy Walker, but I'm going to say Duron Harmon. You could throw in there possibly, if you don't go with Duron Harmon or Tracy Walker, you can go with Jamie Collins. Now, I use those four as like my pillars because they're young and, well, with the exception of Jamie Collins, he's a vet, seasoned vet. They're young, but yet still they bring in a work ethic that is at a pro level, even with the lack of experience, and so forth. With the exception of Trey Flowers have experience. He's been in the Super Bowl, he's been in different, pressure situations. But I look at them, but he has never been like a face of a team, never had to be. He was with Bill Belichick. So they are over there with New England. It's not about a player, it's about a team. That's exactly what the Lions is building here. But you need something to build off of. If you don't have like a particular guy on one side of the ball or one in one position or each position that you can depend on game in, game out, that's going to play at a high level. I often use the going to work Pistons team as my reference, as my template of reference of particularly how to structurally build a team, a winning team. When the Pistons they did the sign and trade for Ben Wallace. For Grant Hill, it was Ben Wallace and Chucky Atkins. For Grant Hill, I believe something else was a part of the deal, along with the money. And Grant Hill went to Orlando. They came from Orlando to Detroit. Now, Ben Wallace wasn't a established name. He was undrafted, and I don't know if he bounced around a couple times before he ended up in Orlando. But he ended up in Orlando. I don't know if he was a walk-on or not. I'm not sure. But he was coming in a minimum amount of time. I think he was playing behind Bo Outlaw and I want to say John Ermici. And I think they had a decision to make between who to sign. Ben Wallace, I think, was averaging maybe like maybe 6 to 8 rebounds a game, but no offense. He was strictly just effort and rebounding. Okay. So, but when they made the deal, when he got here, he immediately like took it. He was, when they signed him, when they trade for him, they signed him to a little minimum deal afterwards, I believe. And so he wasn't really making much money. So I don't know if that initiated the hunger or he was just showing just what he was. It put me in mind of a guy who was highly drafted, from the 49ers, and Jerry Rice. When I look for a player to build off of, I look for their background structure. You could have came from the slums of slums. You could have came from the hardship of hardships. You could have done all that. I just need to know how you handle adversity. And to particular, the reason why I say that particularly, if you're going to play in Detroit, who has a massive amount of, I guess that of, wow, this I don't know, this franchise is, when it comes to playing on the field, is not, it doesn't seem to be focused to detail, the little fine things. And so with that being said, I look at a guy like Ben Wallace, and you really don't know what you have here. So you need someone that you could build off of. So once Ben Wallace started getting the ball rolling, he started building. And as you know, it turned out to be, he started developing to something of consistent where the fans was coming to expect him to be what he is. And so with that expectation, he kept growing. He went from like 6 to 8 rebounds to like uh to 8 to 12 rebounds, and from 12 to 15, I believe. So he developed a rebound role. Well, he was racking up like 20 rebounds, 18 to 15 to 18 rebounds, and he had a hot little streak on it. So you got something to build off of, not by his rebounding, but his all out effort that he's going to outwork you. So the next following year, they complemented that. Now, mind you, it was, they didn't really have much to go with. I think at the time they had Montrose, Cedric Sabalas, and I don't even know who their point guard was. It wasn't Dana Barrows, and it was Chucky Atkins was there. It was Chucky Atkins Stackhouse, and I don't know who this. I think it was Cedric Sabalas was their small forward, or John Wallace. I'm not sure who their small forward was. I don't think it was Michael Curry as of yet. This is up under George Irvine. When Rick Carlisle got there, the first year Rick Carlisle got there, going into the offseason, Joe Dumars made a trade to go after, I believe, Cliff Robinson. And I think he signed or traded for John Barry. Well, he traded for John Barry first and then got Cliff Robinson. I don't know how it went. And I believe they made a trade to send Montrose. I want to say Montrose, and I don't know however happened. They ended up trading, I think, to Toronto, and they received back Corliss Williamson and I believe Michael Curry. So with that being said, but anyway, I don't know how that happened actually. When Rick Carlisle took over as coach, he immediately like installed like this defense. I think him and Kevin O'Neal basically like, we're going to build it off of defense, which is a genius move, because you're building off the hardest worker on your team. Maybe not the most talented, but the hardest worker. So this goes. I say all that to feed it. Excuse me. I say all that to feed into my four anchors: Trey Flowers, Frank Ragnow, Kenny Galladay, and if you're going to say Deron Harmon, Tracy Walker or Jamie Collins. You would say one of them. I'm going to throw in there, even though he's fresh, he's new. I'm going to say Jeff Okuda. He have nothing on him to prove anything on a pro level that you can depend on him to be an anchor. I'm just looking for just mentally strong personnel. You may have been through some things to get there. You may not be the most athletic. You may not be the most, dealing with IQ and technique. And I just need for you to have effort here. Game in, game out. In my opinion, that will outplay mistakes. Effort, effort, effort. I believe this team, this franchise, have always drawn players who have shown effort elsewhere. But when they get here, they put it on cruise control. They show it. They do a little here and there just to get what they want. If it's time to get a paycheck, if it's time to get this, if it's time, if it's something of threatening, they step up. But no one is, I haven't seen not too many bona fide, just, I'm just going to be who I am. Wherever I was at, wherever that I go, I'm going to be who I am. And so with those four anchors, you can build off of. And actually, that's what they did. With Trey Flowers, you surrounded him with, when you got Trey Flowers in, you surround him with Shelton, Jamie Collins, Deron Harmon, and you surround him with that, right? So with Kenny Golladay, you surround him with T.J. Hawkinson, Jesse James, Demi Amendola. We could say T.J. Hawkinson and Danny Amendola. Okay, well, what you surrounded Okudah, you have Deron Harmon, Jasmine Trufant, and you could say Tracy Walker. It depends how they want to slice that bread, which way direction they want to go. But with Frank Ragnow, you surrounded him with Halapalooty Vitae, Jonah, I believe is his name, Jonah Jackson. And you surround him with that. What are you saying with those four anchors? You're saying, this is my standard. The players that I bring in is going to complement them. Either they're going to be on the same level as them, or they're going to be above them. In other words, they will elevate the four anchors. If these are arguably, I would say these are like your four best players on your team, in a position, of course. And you build off of that by complementing them with players that they play well, that they actually may have played well with, or players that you can see what that player actually contribute, how it makes less work for these four anchors. I absolutely love how the Lions are building this team. The record doesn't mean anything. It took them 3 years to find four anchors. It took them, the Quinn Patricia era, 4 years to find four anchors to build off of. 4 years. Some came through the draft, some came through free agency, and some may have came through trade. So it took 4 years to develop that. So the average Lion fan may say, like, well, they need to go because they haven't won anything. There is not one franchise in this league, not one franchise in the league that if you don't have something to build off of, you don't know what you have. It doesn't matter if you're there for 1 year or 6 years. Until you have your foundation or your anchors that you could build off of, until you have your anchors, you have nothing. When Patricia got here, well, no, let's say this way. When Quinn got here, he had nothing to play with. He had no anchors. He had no guys that, I'm not talking about depending on in terms of talent. I'm talking about just in the locker room leadership, mature, that's professional, that does their job. No nonsense, no all of the extra stuff. Their IQ is there, their talent is there, and so forth, but it is mentally strong. Because you're going to have to deal with some heat here. This is a losing franchise for 50 years. The fans is not going to be pleasant because they don't have to be. So it took them 3 years this is when, if you ever heard Patricia say, it took us 3 years to get to this place, to get his guys. His guys are four guys. They didn't necessarily may not all came from the same place. They may not be the prototype where people may think, quote unquote, this is a Patricia type guy because they played for him or so forth. He just need pillars. He need anchors that he could build off of. And I believe he finally have them. Now you can go ahead and make moves based upon what you know you're going to get from your players. This is why you locked Trey Flowers to a large contract, because you can build off what he. If you compliment him with a Danny Shelton, and you may go into the draft or go into the trade or even sign a player that will complement those two on the edge or behind them. Now you got something. But you until you had Trey Flowers, you got nothing to play with. Who is your guy? Who is your guy on the defensive line that is going to be matured in the film room? Who's going to be matured in the locker room? Who's going to elevate everybody's game by his play, game in, game out, practice, as well as if he gets hurt, how to come back. When you get a bad call or whatever the case may be, how do you withstand adversity? Who is that guy on the defensive line until you got Trey Flowers? Who is that guy? You can't say Ndamukong Suh. You can't say, because he was about himself. Rightfully so, he has that choice. Who is the guy that you're going to build off of? Cliff Averill? Who was the guy? Ziggy? Who was the guy? So you don't really have that. You can't say Snacks Harrison. You saw how that played out. You didn't have anybody until you could say A'Shawn Robinson. You can say anyway. You can say anybody, not anyway. You can say anybody. And now go to the secondary. I mean, not secondary. Go to the linebacker core. You could do the same self thing. Who do you have back there that you could depend on in the way that you could depend on Trey Flowers? Look at Trey Flowers, what he have done since he's been here. If you're going to go by sacks and stuff like that, you're really going to miss what he does. So if you were to say, let me say it this way. If I were to say, look at his impact, and I'm going to give you 4 situations. When he get hurt, comes off injury, how did he handle it? How do you handle being a high price tag guy? Let me say it this way. Number 1, how do you handle being a high price tag guy? You get hurt in the offseason, whatever, or now you get hurt in the offseason. You're hurt in the offseason, and you come off injury, and how do you handle the pressure coming in with this speculation? Okay, you're finna make this money, and the expectations are going to be high on you. How do you handle that when you get into a situation of a game where you're being called for something that's really not really accurate, or how do you handle that? How do you handle not having really dependable players next to you? How do you handle, if you look at all the situations that Trey Flowers were in, he was solid. He didn't flinch. He didn't move. That's your anchor. You can say the same thing about Frank Ragnow. Same thing. Just steady. You can say the same thing for Kenny Golladay. Just steady. What you do is that you invest into those anchors. It took them 3 years to get those anchors. 3 off seasons. Excuse me. To get those, or 3 off seasons, or 3 seasons to get those players. Now you can actually start building a championship caliber team. Now, when a fan may say, well, I don't know about that, because you go to the Chiefs, or you go to the 49ers, or you go to the Rams, or you go to these different teams that their first year coach come in and win. The first year coach that come in there, they have something already established. They have like their anchors on their team that you could build off of. You have your guys that you could, there's going to be leaders. Or you have the guys, when you get there, they just buy into. Like when Jim Harbaugh went to the 49ers, he really didn't have much to play with. I don't know if he had Justin Smith or not. I don't know if he had, I know he didn't, I don't know if that was his first year or second year. He drafted Aldon Smith, and he developed like this dominant defense. But he really had nothing to play with. I think he had some vets there. Maybe the linebacker, I can't think of his name. I want to say Brooks. But anyway, you had really nothing to play with. But he developed something with one of his players. They stepped up, and he had something to play with. Either it was there up under Mike Singletary that the players were leaders already there. They just couldn't get it out. and close it out, whatever. Or Jim Harbaugh found his pillars. Every team, if you're going to win coming in the gate, you're going to have your pillars. The Lions didn't have anything to play with. They didn't have nothing. Who you going in your secondary? Who you going to bank on? Your most talented player, arguably at the time, was when Quinn and Patricia came together. Let's say when Patricia got here, arguably your best player in your secondary was Darius Slay, was it not? All right, now can you check off the saying that he was a leader in the locker room? And I'm talking about leader as in like a rah-rah guy or get everybody laughing and joking. I'm talking about how to prepare them for the next game or how to basically how to basically put up a game front. Like, this is what we're going to do. Not we're going to dominate rah-rah talk, but in terms of losing is not an option. Or is it laughing and joking? Are we taking pictures or doing all other stuff? Leadership. I'm not saying he did these things. I'm just saying this is strictly football. Can you say Darius Slay was that? Can you say he was a leader like that in the film study? Can you say he was a leader like that in practice? Can you say he was a leader like that when he on injury, off the season, in season? Can you say he was a leader? You can't say that. I'm not knocking the guy. I'm just saying, like, what I build of a franchise or a team off of is going to be off of hard workers or just strictly football. We're going to pay you to be football. We're not going to pay you to be a drama scene or entertainment for like exploits of this outside nonsense that has anything to take away from me winning and as a franchise. So, but anyway, in your secondary, Darius Slay was arguably your best player. Before Trey Flowers was here, who was your best player on your defensive line? I can't even think of anybody. Because Ziggy was hurt, but he was your best player, but he was hurt going into that season. He was hurt. So I guess you could say Ziggy. And your linebackers, who do you have? Who's your best? You'll say Devin Kennard? Who are you going to say? Now, I'm not talking about talent. I'm not talking about stats. I'm not talking about statistics. I'm talking about who's your leader. Game in, game out, they're not going to just give you hard work. They're going to be a standard where they elevates everybody's game. You don't have none of that there. Until Quinn and Patricia got here, you didn't have a Trey Flowers. You didn't have a Kenny Golladay. You didn't have these things. Now, I don't know. Kenny Golladay may have been up under. Now, I know Quinn drafted him, but that could have been before Patricia got here. But we get to the offense side of the ball in a minute. No, let me change something. Kenny Golladay is not a pillar. I'm going to say an anchor. Yeah, actually, he is. He is. He just needs someone to help him. That's where Amendola comes in at, and he helps him to be this anchor. Now, no matter how the situation turns out of his play here or his time here, that's yet to be determined. But his impact on the field it makes everybody better. Very specifically in the receiving corps, he makes everybody better. So that's why I named him as my anchor. But that defense, what do you have for your leaders? Before you had Trey Flowers, before you had to say I'm going to designate Jamie Collins. Before you had that, or I would say Jelani Tavai. He's a young guy who doesn't have that much experience. He's making his mistakes. He's earning his keep. But I will use him, Jelani Tavai, in the same boat that I would keep in the same like mine as a Kenny Golladay. Now, Jelani Tavai is fresh. He's young. And he doesn't have much of experience as Kenny Golladay to break out. I think Kenny Golladay been here for like 4 years. I'm not sure. I don't know. But each year he improved. Each year, but he never was like the lone guy at his position. You had Marvin Jones. Excuse me. I think you even had Golden Tate when he was drafted. Excuse me. So I just want to talk about that for a second. And even though I'm long-winded and rambling, I just want to say this team is being built in a very productive way, not short term, but long term. And it's making impact that the average fan can't really see. Until you have your anchors in order, you have nothing to build on. You can't make those home run trades or draft trades, or you can't bring in that high profile player because it'd be wasting money. That there's nowhere for that person to do what they do unless they are like a pillar. You can't bring up normally when we make a when we see a player that's up for availability, we want them to come here so they can actually jump in and do what they've been doing wherever they came from. But you have to take this in consideration where they came from. Look what was intact for them to do what they did. When they come here, if they're not ready to be who they were, they're going to be here for the money and they're not going to perform. We saw that in Snacks Harrison. He didn't want to be here. Not put that aside that he didn't want to be here. When he got here, he performed to a certain degree. He's going to be here for the money. Once he gets the money, he checks out. Not checks out physically, mentally, he checks out. So if it's not in order where it's something for him to respect, or a player that's coming in to respect, you got nothing. So you get a guy that comes in and Reggie Ragnow, no, not Ragnow, forgive me, Reggie Ragland and Adrian Peterson. We'll throw those two guys in. They both had good things to say about coming to this team. Now, you can say that that's PR spin. You can say that's whatever. You can say that it's being politically correct, or just dotting your I's and crossing your T's, making sure you're watching your money by not speaking against your team that you're playing for. Peterson, AD, said, well, this team is ready to go. Said Patricia's a great coach. Even if he doesn't believe it, you don't have to say it. If you're doing it for the money, if you're doing it for so you can keep your job, I get it. But you don't have to. You Adrian Peterson. You don't have to do that. Reggie Ragland came in and said, like, this team is Super Bowl-esque. That's from the top what they're talking about. He said that is in place. How they structurally have everything intact there. If let's say for the last past regimes, you had Mayhew and Millen, right? Is it safe to say that they wasn't intact up there in the upper management spot? They had no clue of what they wanted to do. They threw a lot of things on the wall. If it hit, they wrote it. If it didn't, they missed. Quinn came in actually with the actual plan that is successful. Not just he didn't clean out house. He installed foundation where this is how we're going to do the money. This is how we're going to handle this type of this situation. This is how we're going to handle this. This is how we're going to handle this. He has that intact. So now you can build off of that. Now I need to get my coach. Now a person would say Patricia has a losing record. Any first time head coach or whatever. He has nothing to play with. I got my coach now. Now I got to get him something to play with. I need to get him some leaders, some anchors. So he got him some. He got him Trey Flowers. He got him Jelani Tavai. I'm going to say he got him Jeff Okudah. Or you could say Tracy Walker. Or you could say, not Tracy Walker. You could say Deron Harmon. You could say Jamie Collins. You got some guys to play off your prized possession, which is Trey Flowers. Now you can go into the offseason and you have not only do you have the money, you also have the cap. I mean, the drafting situation, the drafting pieces to actually trade up to do things, because you can't trade for a player. Okay, let's go back a couple years when TJ Hawkinson was the 8th overall pick. And the guy going into that draft was clearly, for me, I mean, personally for myself, was Josh Allen. By all means, go get the guy. That was my guy. I believe he would literally turned around that defense. literally by himself. Not by himself. Well, say what he brought, he would have basically complemented everything that was here, and they would have won those games that they lost. But anyway, they wasn't in any position to mortgage the future because they had nothing. They had nothing intact. All they had was Trey Flowers. You don't have anybody in the secondary that you can count on. You have nobody in the linebacker core that you can count on. You have nobody that you can count on other than Trey Flowers. They knew what they was going to get with Trey Flowers because they worked with him in New England. So you couldn't make the move for Josh Allen because you're mortgaging your future. What I mean by that is they could have traded up, but it would have cost them the next year's draft picks to get a guy that you don't know if he's going to be an anchor or not. If you have an anchor here, you can go make a trade for it or make a move for it in the next next off season. This is why I think they're in a great position what they're doing. This is why I say Quinn is doing a fantastic job. Patricia been here for 3 years. Quinn and Patricia will be here for another year. They will not get fired. So you could bring a guy like Adrian Peterson, who don't have to come here. He got either retire or he can go to another team. But what he brings here is teeth to an organization that didn't have it. He brings that grit, that no nonsense grit. Look what I love how they're building this team. And yeah, I'm going on the record by saying they will beat the Saints. They will beat the Saints. I'm going to say the score will be 24-17. 24-17. With that being said, Lion fans, I salute.